another fireside chat here from the special interest group on values-based and sustainable innovation. And this is also taking place in collaboration with the Impact Project, a European project where we're trying to understand how to build values-based innovation cultures for creating a sustainable impact of our business activities. So I'm very happy to have Sven-Uwe Müller here today. Sven, you're a program leader for the cooperation with the private sector at GIZ, which is the German Society for International Development Cooperation, if I put that correctly, I hope. And as I wrote in the announcement, so this virtual fireside chat should be about values-based business model innovation at the Lab of Tomorrow, since the Lab of Tomorrow enables company representatives and entrepreneurs from emerging markets and the European Union to jointly take up opportunities for business, for sustainable business with joint new ventures and startups. And today, Sven and I will look back onto 14 processes of the Lab of Tomorrow that have been conducted so far across the globe and their contribution to the sustainable development goals. And we'll talk about lessons learned, good practices, innovation barriers that you have detected or that persisted, and also briefly at least address the difficulties of measuring impact, at least in this context. So Sven and the Lab of Tomorrow and myself, we had the chance to collaborate a few years ago, or starting a few years ago actually, and contributing to a kind of toolbox that we will also talk about. But since not everyone is familiar with the Lab of Tomorrow yet, let's paste the link to that institution into the chat. And Sven, maybe you can just give us a brief introduction into what the Lab of Tomorrow is and what's the basic idea behind that.
Yes, thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much for the invitation. I'm happy to join ISPIM, and I think it's for us, it's also very important to have a dialogue with the innovation community. We see us very much as a part of it. And yeah, the lab is a kind of special thing. We are not, we are more than a hackathon. We are we kind of address the whole process from the very beginning to the hopeful successful building of a sustainable business model to address the SDGs. And I brought 1.5 slides, let's say, and I would share them to give you a first introduction into the process. So you should be able to see the slides now, I hope. Do you see them?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So
maybe go into presentation mode.
Presentation mode, right? Yes, I will.
So we can see them, since our little
you can see them more clearly. Yeah,
so bright, so we can see it well enough.
Very good. At the very basis of our process are development challenges in our partner countries, in developing and emerging countries and markets, and they are SDG relevant. And we come in where there is not a normal market solution to address them. And we come in with the Lab of Tomorrow process, which uses several tools and which accompanies the stakeholders over the process of understanding the challenge, generating ideas to find solutions to address the challenge, and then incubate these first ideas to become viable business models, so that at the end we have a sustainable business which addresses SDG challenges. So talking about the impact, impact here is kind of underlying the whole process. It's designed into the process. Our solutions are always designed to address sustainable business goals, sustainable development goals. And so the process is very much along the lines of design thinking and business modeling. So we start with the understanding phase. Understanding the problem is key of all design thinking processes. So we also allocate quite some time for this, about 3 months. We invest usually into topic analysis and really conducting field research, understanding the topics, understanding the environment, understanding the technologies and how they can contribute. And also the key is really to come to challenges which are actionable, which you can address, where you see business potential and where a business is the solution, because there are many challenges where a business might not be the solution, where you need regulation or so. So you have to sort this out. And then the second phase is the ideation phase. It's the most visible phase and the most fun phase. It's a 4 to 5 days design thinking workshop where we sit down in groups, where we have defined the overall challenge, and also we call it then sub-challenges. For example, if you have an overall challenge like addressing non-communicable diseases in Ghana, which is one of our recent processes, then you can break down it into sub-challenges on how to address the general population and raise awareness, how to address patients, how to address personnel, medical personnel, how to address the doctors, how to secure a provision of safe medicine in an efficient way, and so on. So these could be sub-challenges. And if we find a team of entrepreneurs and other stakeholders, it's a multi-stakeholder process. So we always pay attention that it's not only entrepreneurs, but the majority, of course, are people from the business, because we want to have business models at the end. And then we put them together in design thinking working groups of 5 to 7 colleagues, and have an ideation process. And each working group has a separate sub-challenge and comes out then with a solution. It's an open innovation process, so we don't know what it is. And that's also often a problem in motivating business people, because time is money, and you usually want to know for what you invest your money. So this is one of the key challenges. You already mentioned what are our challenges. Finding the right people and motivating them and making them clear that their investment of time is not the 4 to 5 day workshop, but that this workshop is only the beginning. And it then comes to the incubation phase, where we work very thoroughly on developing a business model, a viable business product from these first ideas. So it should be, at the end, there should be market-ready products and services. And so there are lots of stages of piloting, prototyping, testing, refining, in order to finally come to a product which is really market-ready. And that's a process of at least 3 months. We stay with the team for this process. We organize coaching, and we also try to link them to possible funders and investors, so that in the end, hopefully, we have a sustainable business. So that's the process. We can go into details on concrete examples later on. Let me add a brief pitch for a new product. Last year, I had to admit we were still working on it, but now it's ready and so ready for download. Feel free to look on our homepage, www.lab-of-tomorrow.com, where you can find it. It's a toolkit, so an assembly of different tools. Many of these tools, I think you know, as you come from the innovation ecosystem. but I think the specific advantage of this is that we really analyzed all the tools, broke them down in a very unified way, and looked for their specific contribution for this specific Lab of Tomorrow process, where we accompany a team from the very beginning of defining a challenge to ideation to then refinement of the business model. And you will find around 30 tools in a very unified and clear system, where they are described, where you find some templates, some visual instructions, and where you also find examples of how we use them in the process, so that you can really get a feeling of what it is about. Yeah, I would like to end with this pitch, and I think, Henning, you still have a lot of questions, and so let's move to the questions.
Right. So I understand. So the first step is always identifying a partner country, right, where you see some potentials for conducting such a lab process. One of the partner countries we have been collaborating on was Uganda, for instance, where they had the challenge to provide clean energy for all. Then you go into this process, get different stakeholders on board, and then, since we're talking about values-based innovation here in this SIG especially, comes a point where you need a kind of commitment of the different stakeholders, of the different participants, to actually make this sustainable development goal, for instance, part of the purpose of the whole process, right? To come to an agreement and to a commitment that this is not just about exploiting an immediate market opportunity, but that they see a long-term perspective to actually, create social, environmental, and likewise economic value. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that development of these shared values or this kind of commitment works, and what kind of difficulties you might have been facing in that particular phase?
Yeah, I said we tried to really start the whole process from an SDG challenge, so it's embedded in the whole process. And for example, when we go into the business modeling, we also always have these categories of the environmental and social benefits and the environmental and social costs. And if the costs are higher than the benefits, it's a no-go. Then obviously we can't do it. We can't stay involved. And if the team would like to go forward, well, okay, we can't stop them, but we definitely wouldn't support it. But we actually never encountered such a case. And usually the colleagues who join these processes, because it's a multi-stakeholder process, and we often have the perspective of the NGOs or of groups which are targeted or groups which benefit from it, they are involved in the process. So from there, you always have to integrate their interests and their benefits into the model, so into the business model and into the further deliberations of how to establish it on the market. So from that perspective, we actually never really encountered major challenges. And as you mentioned, Uganda, that was our LOT 6, the sixth lab process. Where, by the way, now we have 16 processes altogether. The lab is nearly 6 years old by now, and we already finished 10 processes, and we have currently 6 running in different stages of the development from very early challenge definition to really nearly end of the coaching phase. So the 6th process was the challenge there. The major challenge was, how might we improve access to affordable and reliable energy in Uganda? and it was done with some GIZ projects in Uganda. So that's also a very important part of our process. We always need to have a local partner because we need to have the buy-in of the local community, and we need to have colleagues on the ground in our partner countries who really who know the country and who feel responsible to make this process successful. So that's also a very important part of it. And if some colleagues in this call come from countries, developing countries, emerging markets, who are interested to conduct such a process, please feel free to reach out to us. So, for example, one solution of this process in Uganda was a venture which is running now. It's called Wamala Energy, and they designed coolers to cool milk because the problem is that farmers have big herds of cows and have a lot of milk, but it has to be cooled in order to really come to the market. And there had been quite some losses due to the heat and due to the long ways the milk had to be transported. So Wamala Energy came up with a cooling product, solar-based, solar energy-fed coolers who produce ice, which is then used to cool the milk and bring it to the markets. And the first pilot was started. It increased the productivity of the farmers by more than 25%. And yeah, this venture was especially successful. It also won a third place in this European climate kick competition called Climate Launchpad. And they are on the ground. They are expanding, but yeah, the main challenge is actually getting money because they have a kind of franchise system. The local farmers don't have the money to invest, so they have to invest first and then have to get some revenue from the milk cooling. So the farmers pay per use in a way, and so you have an upfront investment, which is a challenge. And in a way, yeah, you also asked about challenges. The main challenge is really this very last phase from the coaching and defining the business model. That's still fine, but then there is this valley of death where you need a first small investment to really test it on a market to be more convincing in order to really mobilize then bigger investments to scale up. And that's very difficult. It's also something which we can't address with our funds because we also have some limitations. We can't really invest into ventures. That's not the role which which our commissioning entity, the German Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, sees us in. And so yeah, how to bridge this valley of death is a permanent challenge. But when we manage to bridge it, then it can be quite a tremendous impact. Our most successful example is actually MaishaMeds. It's the result of the third challenge, which we conducted in Kenya. The challenge was how might we increase access to medicines and diagnostics in Kenya. And MaishaMeds is a solution which provides medication for patients via a digital tool. It helps clinics, it helps small pharmacies to source quality medication. That's also a big problem in Kenya and also the neighboring countries. You have a lot of very small scale pharmacies who had to source from some wholesalers, retailers, local ones, where they weren't sure whether the quality is really the one which they wanted. And now via this tool, these small pharmacies are linked directly to the producers, and there is a whole a chain of traceability for medicine, so that it's the original medicine which is sold and distributed. And this is our most successful venture. Actually, it already managed to get $5 million of investment, also from USAID, from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, but also from others. And now it provides already more than 1.5 million patients and 500 pharmacies secure and affordable drugs. And it's expanding right now from Kenya, where it started, to Tanzania and Uganda, and further steps are planned. And I think that's a very nice thing. That's what we envision. That's what we really want. But that's not easy. I mean, everybody who works in innovation knows that you have these unicorns, not every day, but only sometimes. And so if we look at our figures now, we completed 10 processes. We had more than 270 participating companies, organizations, entrepreneurs. We had more than 54 innovative business ideas generated. So that's what comes out of this second stage, the ideation process. We have more than 31 business models developed. That's what comes out of the third phase, the coaching phase. And we have 12 ventures in operation. So this is then what we actually want to accomplish, that we have business models established on the market. So you can see it's a big funnel, and at the end there's not, you have to put much more into it in order to come to some ventures. But that's normal, that's clear, and I think we shouldn't complain. But of course, we always try to optimize the system in order to have more impact and have more successful ventures. That's what we want, and that's what we strive for, and why we kind of try to fine-tune our system all the time. Maybe a very interesting development, which is very much in our interest, is that we now have more and more partner organizations joining forces with us. For example, we have the DEZA, the Swiss Development Agency. We have the ADA, the Austrian Development Agency, conducting Lab of Tomorrow processes, using our tools, cooperating with us. We are involved in an advisory function. They lead the process, but we stay involved as much as they want us to be involved. And so we have the first two challenges conducted, one by DEZA and one by ADA. And we see this also as a future model. We want to have this really in the public domain, and everybody who wants to use it can use it and should use it. And with the toolbox, it is now available. And that's also a scale up, which we targeted since quite a while, and where we are at least one step further now.
Yeah, thank you very much. So yeah, I mean, the two aspects that I always found very impressive on the kind of approach you're pursuing there really all across the globe is, on the one hand, starting with the SDGs and starting with the intent to create a positive impact, spotting out that potential, and then starting to enroll a business on these investigations, so to say. And the second aspect, and you mentioned that, is very tricky and was also widely discussed here at the conference, is the tricky question of impact assessment, right? And it's very difficult to really spot and say, okay, so you have some good cases where they acquired substantial external funding, right? Where you can see here, this is evident, this is a self-sustaining business. But maybe I think there are a lot of intangible benefits involved there, like, I don't know, European firms getting into contact with local stakeholders, spreading an entrepreneurial mindset among the participants, right? Conveying certain facilitation methods and so on. Are these intangible benefits, are these also appreciated on behalf of BMZ? Do they play a systematic role? Could you imagine, including them somehow into demonstrating the positive impact you have?
They are certainly appreciated, and especially at the beginning, we kind of had to appeal to BMZ to be content with these more intangible outcomes. By now, having grown up, I would hold us accountable really to the yardstick of successful ventures. But you see, I mean, we started 5 years ago, and now we have 12 ventures in operation. It also needs time, and I think that's, we all know this in the innovation space. And I think by now it is also appreciated by BMZ that we were able to set up real ventures which function and which address development challenges with a business model. That's the point. And I would say, of course, we have this positive impact. We bring together the world of business and the world of startups and entrepreneurs with the world of development cooperation. This is certainly a benefit, but if that would be all, it wouldn't be enough. So yeah, we really strive to come to ventures, to bring them into operation, to get the funding for them. And that's a long-term process, but it's doable. And if we are successful, then it's very rewarding. I think that's really, it's also very convincing. It's much more convincing than like, okay, you had so many outreach events or so many stakeholders brought together on an event. I mean, I'm a bit impatient with all these events where you just bring stakeholders together. We really have to achieve more traction, more impact. And I think, I'm more optimistic now that we are on the right track for it. And also that this model is now taken by other development organizations. I think, means that they are convinced that this is a way to go forward. And it would be good if more try it and adapt it to their needs and really try to bring in the power of innovation of the private sector and the entrepreneurs in order to solve development challenges.
Okay, there might be time for one question from the audience, if there is any. So one is Coco Savak is asking, what would it take to get this kind of traction?
Needed, right? Yeah. Thanks for that question. Yeah. Yes. We asked ourselves this question very intensively about 2 years ago, because at that stage we did not have that many ventures established, and we were in doubt whether our process is really the most efficient way to reach out to those who have to invest into the ventures. And my answer from all these deliberations, which started 2 years ago and which led us to involving possible venture funders or also in like foundations earlier on. That's the way we have chosen to address this. So now, since about 1.5 years, we started it with the 8th process actually in Thailand, that we had a pitch event at the end of the innovation workshop, and where we pitched to interested founders, foundations, innovation agencies. So we had a kind of panel of people who look at business plans and give their feedback. So I mean, of course, these very first ideas are still crude, are still imperfect, but involving those stakeholders who have the perspective of those who fund these things very early on, I think educates also our teams very good and focuses them on kind of investability. We found this a very good way to address this challenge.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So thank you very much. Unfortunately, I don't know how that happened, but somehow it looks like the time is already up. So thank you very much, Sven, for these insights to the lab of tomorrow. Those of you who are interested in collaboration, please contact Sven directly. As you heard, I mean, the whole concept relies on a multi-stakeholder approach. There's numerous partner countries already involved and numerous more projects and LOT processes ongoing and to come. I think Luisa also shared the link to the toolbox that we developed here together, and that is now publicly available. So anyone can use that and download that, and also get directly into contact with Sven and the GIZ if you have any further questions on that. I think it's a very helpful tool, and hope that spreads out a lot through other development cooperation organizations. So thank you very much, Sven. That was really great.
Thanks, Henning. Yeah.
To all the
and
participants.
Thanks to all participants. And yeah, please address me. Yeah, I saw some questions. Arnold, yes, please contact me directly. We are definitely open for cooperation. And it was a pleasure to join you in this session.